What exactly is astrophysics and how does it differ from astronomy and cosmology?
Whereas astrophysics is a subfield that uses physics, math, chemistry.
So, what kind of problems or phenomena does an astrophysicist typically study?
One can also study comets and asteroids. You can ask questions like how many different kinds of stars are there?
Welcome, viewers, to No Herd Mentality's career podcast. If your curiosity is bigger than the universe, astrophysics might be your destination. Today, we are going to unravel the roadmap from a classroom physics to cosmic discovery with none other than Associate Professor, Chairperson, Board of Graduate Studies, Indian Institute of Astrophysics in Bangalore, Dr. Piyali. Dr. Piyali did her master's and PhD in physics from the Indian Institute of Science in Bengaluru. She has held postdoc positions at different places, including TIFR Mumbai, Nordita Stockholm, High Altitude Observatory Boulder, and the University of Oslo between 2008 and 2015. Since 2015, she is a faculty member at the Indian Institute of Astrophysics in Bangalore. Let's welcome Dr. Piyali. Thank you so much, Doctor, for taking out the time to do this podcast on astrophysics with us today.
Thank you, Ruchika, for having me.
So, Dr. Piyali, I will start with the basics. What exactly is astrophysics and how does it differ from astronomy and cosmology?
Okay, to give you a answer, so astronomy is the superset of all the three astrophysics, astronomy, and cosmology. So, for example, when you're an astronomer, you would ask questions like how big is the sun, or how many different shapes the galaxies come in. Whereas astrophysics is a subfield that uses physics, math, chemistry to answer questions like, why is the sun yellow? Why do galaxies come in different shapes like spiral, elliptical, irregular? And you can even ask questions like, where does all the gold on the earth come from? So these are questions that an astrophysicist would answer. And then cosmology is a subfield of astrophysics that deals with the evolution of the universe. Even though a long time ago it started as a purely theoretical field, it is now strongly driven by observations and it is under the purview of astronomy. So astronomy is the largest of the largest set of all, and then you have astrophysics, and then you have cosmology, which is a part of astrophysics. Hope that gives you an idea.
Sure, sure. So, cosmology is a part of astrophysics.
Yes.
All right, great. So, if you study astrophysics, you will also get to study cosmology.
Uh, well, I mean, when you are studying, as in doing the coursework, then of course, yes. But then at some point, you need to choose your specialization or your special topic on which you will conduct your research. So when you do that, I mean, you may or may not choose cosmology as your specialization. So, it all depends on what you are interested in. You may even want to work on the sun or, on some other stars or galaxies. There are a lot of other things in astrophysics other than cosmology, for example.
Understood. So, what kind of problems or phenomena does an astrophysicist typically study?
Yeah, like I said, there are a lot of objects in the universe to study, starting from our nearest star, which is the sun, to other stars in our galaxy. And that these other stars will have their planetary systems, just like our sun has. One can also study comets and asteroids. You can ask questions like how many different kinds of stars are there? And by studying those, we can infer a lot about the life cycle of our own star, for example. Now, the makeup of our own galaxies and other galaxies, how they interact with each other, and these are some of the phenomena you may want to address. And like I am moving from small to larger spatial scales, for example, from near Earth space to sun, solar system, the galaxy, the immediate neighborhood of our galaxies, and so on and so forth. You're moving from small to larger spatial scales. You can also study phenomena in terms of the amount of energy you release. Just to give an example, the solar flares, you may have heard of solar flares, which are these energetic eruptions that occur on our sun. And they also affect a lot of anthropogenic activities on Earth. So the solar flares have energies of, say, 10 raised to 9 Hiroshima bombs. Whereas, there are other phenomena like quasars, or, compact star mergers, like neutrons, two neutron stars, colliding and merging with each other. So those phenomena release an even higher amount of energy, like 10 raised to 18 Hiroshima bombs. So you can classify phenomena in the universe according to the energy, according to their spatial scales, and you can use different methods to, address specific problems at those energies and spatial scales.
That sounds really interesting. Now, that brings to my next question. How much of astrophysics is theory based versus observation and experimentation?
Well, astrophysics is actually driven by observations, first of all. So if there were no observations, then astrophysics would be a very dry and drab field. And to understand those observations, we apply physics, math, chemistry, and sometimes even biology. So actually, there's a field called laboratory astrophysics as well, where you attempt to reproduce phenomena, or you find analogies in the lab which are similar to what you observe in space. For example, let me indulge myself a bit here. So recently we performed a lab experiment using a very simple audio speaker and polymeric fluids like paint to understand how a forest of plasma jets called spicules form in the chromosphere of the sun. So there are these, different aspects of astrophysics that exist, and one may, take each up depending on what they are interested in.
All right. So, you just quoted an example, and it makes me even more curious to know more about how things work in astrophysics space. So can you please share an example of a fascinating discovery that took place in astrophysics, which has really changed our understanding of how the universe works?
Okay, so here I would actually give you more than one example. So since I am a solar astrophysicist, I would first mention the theoretical prediction of solar wind. So solar wind is this, wind that is emanating from the surface of the sun, and it encompasses the entire solar system. So this wind is basically a stream of energetic particles like protons and neutrons and electrons, which travel at speeds of 400 kilometers per second. So it's not kilometer per hour, but kilometers per second. So this was first theoretically predicted by a pioneering scientist whose name was Eugene Parker, and it was subsequently discovered by Soviet and American spacecraft. So this discovery is in 1950s. So in a paper in 1957, Eugene Parker showed that although sun's corona is attracted to the sun by solar gravity, it is also a good conductor of heat, and it is still very hot at large distances from the sun. So he also predicted that because of this wind is going from the sun's surface to the fringes of the solar system, the solar gravity is gradually weakening, and this has an effect on the flow, the solar wind, which is similar to the flow you observe in a rocket engine or, for example, wind tunnels. So this flow has a transition from what is known as subsonic, which is slower than the speed of sound, to supersonic, which is faster than the speed of sound. So when Parker first made his theory, wanted to publish his theory, at that time it was a hypothesis, he submitted his paper to a very well-known journal known as the Astrophysical Journal, whose editor was actually the Nobel laureate Subramaniam Chandrasekhar. However, the referees of that paper rejected this hypothesis, but Subramaniam Chandrasekhar put his foot down and supported his younger colleagues, saying that, I really support the math he has done and this should be published. Now, just after it was published, few years after it was published, the Soviet spacecrafts Luna as well as the US spacecraft Mariner actually measured the solar wind. So this is one of the very important, important stories where a prediction has been made first and discovered later on.
That's really very, very riveting. So, how do these discoveries actually help in our, in our growth, in our evolution? I mean, what is the uh, deep meaning and purpose of these discoveries?
Well, yeah, we are only trying to understand the universe we live in. But let me give you a perspective also from the past in 1990s, where most of the viewers weren't even born. So I don't know if you have heard of the pale blue dot photograph. So let me just explain a little bit. So it was a photograph taken by a NASA spacecraft known as Voyager 1 in 1990 from a distance of 6 billion kilometers from the Earth. So this Voyager spacecraft was basically sent from Earth, and it basically is traveling across the solar system and outward and wants to study the heliosphere, or the space around the sun, and what happens when it exits the solar system. So when it was on the fringes of the solar system, the celebrated science communicator and astronomer Carl Sagan asked NASA to turn the spacecraft towards the Earth one time and take a last look at our planet before it exits the solar system. And when this photograph that the NASA took was published, he famously called it a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. You see, yet it contains everything that is dear to us. It's just a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. That's what it looks like in the photograph. It's nothing, but yet this is the reason we survive, right? So
Yeah,
you
it's
get
the
this,
seed of our entire existence.
yes, yeah. So that's basically the crux of the matter.
Oh God, it is truly fascinating. So, how do astrophysics use technology like telescopes, satellite, and supercomputers in their work?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So we need all of these actually. So these are the tools we use to observe, first of all. Then we gather data. So basically like images, spectra, and then we make numerical calculations and data analysis of the observations that we have. So, for example, just by analyzing the light that we are receiving from these objects, we can tell what elements are there in that astronomical object we are observing. For example, we are observing a star which is really very far away, and we are only looking at, and we want to find out, the light consists of different wavelengths and different emission and absorption lines. So by studying the spectra of a star, it's like, studying the fingerprint. By each element has a fingerprint in spectra. So you can tell, oh, this star is made of these many elements, and then these are the processes that are going on. Maybe the star is composed of this much of matter and things like that. But to do this, we need a lot of data, right? So in fact, astrophysicists have been using methods of data science since last 50 years, long before the advent of this area. So data science can be called a spin-off of astronomy, just like, World Wide Web or the internet is a spin-off of high energy physics from CERN. There's also an area called computational astrophysics where we solve mathematical equations on supercomputers to understand the system that we are observing. So, for example, in my research group, we solve equations of magnetohydrodynamics to study the dynamism of plasma in the sun. So, these are like a plethora of methods that have to work in tandem. So, I mean, even a person who is doing computational astrophysics cannot be doing his or her work under a rock. They have always to refer to, what are the observations of the sun telling him or her. So that is very important to do numerical calculations, but to be grounded in observations. So, and these observations can be taken by ground-based telescope, or there can be telescopes in the space. So, for example, when you are on Earth, you can observe using visible spectrum or the radio wavelengths, but you cannot observe in ultraviolet because the clouds or the atmosphere of the Earth, the ozone layer, blocks the ultraviolet. But for example, if you want to observe ultraviolet and X-rays and things like that, you need to go to space. So you have ground-based telescopes, space-based telescopes, depending on the wavelength of the light that you want to use to study the objects of your interest.
So, what inspired you personally to pursue astrophysics? And do you see enough women opting for this field?
Um, well, that's also a very good question. So, personally, I would say that, when I was a little girl, the Halley's Comet was visiting Earth. So I observed the Halley's Comet using naked eye from the terrace of my home along with my father. And somehow that spurred my, interest towards astrophysics. So initially, actually, I wanted to uh, become become an astronaut. So I wanted to go to space. But then I later, when I grew up, I came to know that it involves a lot of rigorous training. Like you have to you have to be able to cope with microgravity and things like that. So then I decided I'm better off doing physics than these rigorous physics, rigorous, physical training of the body. So that's when I decided, that I want to do astrophysics.
And do you see
Yeah,
enough women?
yes. So about the question of women, there are a lot of women who are now doing PhD in astrophysics. And we try to, have special programs for girls and women to encourage them to take up STEM fields. I would say it's not easy. I mean, like any other field, there are patriarchal mindset and things like that, but it's not very different in astrophysics. We are all working in the same society, so it's the same struggle that women and girls have to go through. But yeah, I mean, now there are a lot of support systems, and all institutes have these gender amity cells and things like that to help women grow in this area without having to face any kind of harassment, sexual or otherwise. So, things are much better than it was, say, even 50 years ago.
That's very encouraging to know. So now it brings me to my next section, which is, what is a typical career pathway from a student to a professional astrophysicist? So what kind of an academic background do you require to become an astrophysicist? And if you can go back to as early as the subjects that the student needs to take and focus on in high school.
Yeah, well, you have to be consistently taking sciences in your career like physics, math, chemistry, um, computer science or electronics and things like that in your school. And if you're going to pursue engineering, then electrical and electronics, mechanical, optical, these are some of the areas in which you might want to specialize. So you see, other than studying the physics, astronomers use a lot of advanced instruments like telescopes, spacecrafts, and things like that. So there's a big requirement for good engineers who can, work on astronomical and space instrumentation, material sciences, develop new materials, and things like that. So, it's not just physics and math. I mean, physics and math and chemistry are very important to take in school. But as you go to college and university, you can diversify a bit. But there are a lot of areas which, even if you go to even engineering areas, where you can come back and contribute to astronomy.
So, you did mention about certain specializations like solar physicists and computational physicists. So, can you just take us through the entire gamut of specializations that exist within astrophysics?
Okay. So this is after you or during you are doing when you are doing your PhD, that's when you choose a research problem. So what you do is, okay, so let me just take you through the steps, right? I mean, after you have cleared your 12th, for example.
Yeah,
So
that would be
after
nice.
that, yeah. So after that, you need to do a bachelor's in sciences, maybe in physics or applied math or maybe even electronics and things like that, or you could do a BTech or a BE in engineering, and thereafter you should do your masters in sciences. So in masters of sciences, a lot of universities that nowadays offer specialization in astrophysics, but that is not a mandatory criteria for you to do a PhD. So even if you have a masters of science, a generic master of science without a specialization, that is also good enough. And after that, you have to, if you are in India, you have to sit for some competitive exams. So these are like exams like conducted by CSIR, for example. It's known as the JRF, the Junior Research Fellowship Examination. Or you can write the exams like JEST, JEST, that and then there's also GATE. These are like acronyms for different exams, and then they will give you a score. So based on that score in different, all these national level competitive exams, different institutes, research institutes will call you for an interview. So, and then in the interview, you will be asked, questions on, how well you know your physics, or, we will test you on some problem solving skills and things like that. And if you clear the interview, then we offer you PhD position in our institute. So, for example, IIA, the Indian Institute of Astrophysics in Bengaluru, is the largest institute of astrophysics in India in terms of the faculty members working on astrophysics. So besides that, there are other institutes like IUCA in Pune, TIFR in Mumbai, and then there are a lot of other smaller astronomy departments in IISc in Bengaluru, different IITs and ISERs as well. So a student who has these valid or high JEST, GATE, and GRF scores can always apply for an interview to all these places for a PhD. So after
So,
you,
yeah, sorry, just one question. So, the entrance exam is required only at the postgrad level, like once you have completed your graduation at the
yes.
postgrad level and not at the undergrad level.
No, no, it is at the postgrad level. But let me also tell you one thing, that IIA runs these two different PhD programs. One is the PhD in physics, which you can apply for after your master's. And alternately, there's another PhD program. It's called an integrated MTech PhD program in engineering. So this is because, as I mentioned, that astrophysics needs a lot of instruments at observatories. So there's requirement to develop telescopes and associated electronics and optics, even adaptive optics. So then we need engineers for that. So then we also take students who have done their engineering graduation, like a BTech degree, and then they can apply for an MTech and then do their PhD in astronomical instrumentation. So I'm now speaking for IIA. So IIA has these two different PhD degrees, one in sciences and one in engineering. So, a student can opt for both, or opt for either depending on what they are interested in. So even after an MSc you can opt for an MTech and then a PhD. So a person who has done sciences can also go over to engineering if you are interested in building things with your hands, for example.
All right. So, what kind of research opportunities should students look out for during their undergrad and postgrad studies?
Ah. First of all, I would advise them to focus on understanding physics and honing their problem solving capability when they are in school and in their college in undergrad. A strong foundation in physics is a must, right? And they should also have a feel for numbers. They should be able to make estimates and things like that, because we work a lot with numbers in astronomy. And there are opportunities. If they don't want to do a PhD right away, then there are also other opportunities that we provide in IIA. For example, we have short 3-month internship opportunities for undergraduate and postgraduate students. So what happens is sometimes as faculty members, we have several small problems that can be handled by senior UG or PG students, and they don't require the skills of a full-time PhD scholar. So they are like really small problems which can be completed in a short duration. So such college and university students can gain first-hand experience of research. So when you are doing your BSc or MSc, you are basically doing some coursework and writing exams, but you're not really doing any research. So if you want to, understand if research is your cup of tea or not before you actually, wet your feet in it, you might want to apply for our internship program to check if, it's really for you or not. So you can get this first-hand experience of research. And these internship opportunities can also be leveraged for doing master's coursework projects. So a lot of master's programs and even bachelor's program now have a project component, and which have a certain amount of credits and CGPA associated with it. So such students who want to do their coursework project, they can also apply to IIA for these 3 months or 6 months, and they can do their projects with us also. I mean, we also provide a stipend to them to be able to stay
That's
in
nice.
Bangalore and do these internship projects.
So, how long does it take to
Hmm.
complete your studies and the training which is needed to work professionally in this field?
Yeah, that would be so from the completion of your college bachelor's degree, I would say it would take like maybe 10 to 12 years, including your master's, PhD, and postdoctoral experiences. So basically, you do a bachelor's in science followed by a master's, and then you get admission in a PhD course. Um, so a PhD program will typically take 4 to 5 years to finish. The first year of the PhD will consist of rigorous coursework that is carried out at IIA. Anywhere else you go, there'll also be a rigorous 1 year of coursework. Then this coursework is followed by a comprehensive examination, which is basically an interview where the student is again asked questions on his her coursework and whatever research they have been doing for last 2 years. So if one qualifies for this comprehensive examination, then the student can continue to work for the thesis under the supervision of 1 or 2 faculty members in the institute. So in IIE, we have this system. So, this whole process from finishing the bachelor's degree to, submitting your PhD thesis would typically take maybe 8 to 9 years. And after that, one has to have some on-the-job training. So this was like your study till PhD, and then you have to do some work experience. So for that, one has to apply for positions, postdoctoral positions, as they are called, in India or even abroad, to get a feel for how it is. So during a PhD, it was basically your PhD supervisor who was suggesting a problem to you, and then you are trying to solve it. So during PhD, during your postdoctoral experience, you try to think of a PhD problem yourself and then try to solve it. So it's basically like a work experience. So typically, researchers who wish to come back to academia as faculty members themselves are expected to have 2 or 3 such postdoctoral experiences. So these postdoctoral experiences are typically 2 years each. So, you need to have like 4 to 5 years of postdoctoral experience. So typically that makes like 10 to 15 years after your BSc.
All right. So, how does the typical day in the life of an astrophysicist looks like?
Yeah, so that depends on what stage of the career you are in. So when you are a postdoc or an early career astrophysicist, you have a lot more time to spend on creative pursuits. But as you grow in your career, you also have to support activities in your institute. For example, when you were introducing me, you mentioned that I am the chairperson of the Board of Graduate Studies. So that basically means that I am responsible the for the PhD students and internship students in IIA, from the time they, even before they come to the institute, when they apply to the institute till they submit the degree. So all their, this whole journey, like we are a committee and section that takes care of this thing, which means there's a lot of administrative work as well. This is very important, but it is administrative work. But at the end of the day, I always enjoy, going back to my creative pursuits. So if you ask me, now, for example, I start my day really early, like, 8 o'clock or something. I come to my office, and then I make myself a cup of coffee, and I what problems I have been solving, what are the hiccups, is there anything I need to do to, address them. And then I often also meet my PhD students during this time in the morning, and to learn, what they are going through. If they are stuck at a problem, then I try to help them. Or, it's often that I and my PhD students, we work together trying to address a problem. So I try to inculcate a very healthy mentor-student relationship, where I'm not spoon-feeding the student, but yet I'm encouraging the student to, think of different ways to, solve his or her PhD problem. Now, as the day goes on, so more and more administrative works comes in, and then in the afternoon there are a lot of meetings, just like you will have in a typical office. So that is how my day looks like now.
Great, great. That sounds great. You seem to be quite satisfied and fulfilled in whatever you are doing, and that's what matters the most. So, according to you, what are the essential skill sets and qualities that an astrophysicist needs to possess in order to have a fulfilling and a successful run in this career?
Ah, that's a great question. So, regarding the academic skills, of course, you need to have mathematical ability and physical reasoning, and also curiosity and persistence, creativity and critical thinking. Besides that, you also need to know how to manage your time. You need to have some sort of discipline, and you also should have a realization of ethics. So which means, like, you should have the knowledge of research methodology, and the questions of when is something being plagiarized or not plagiarized. So that is also important because for us, I mean, for astrophysicists, what is important is our integrity and our reputation. So that is very very important for us. So you need to have this discipline and have ethics, and you should also be able to work well with others. So because science is a social pursuit, right? We are all social beings. So being able to collaborate with other people is a superpower. So these are, I think, some of the essential skills that also desirable in an astrophysicist.
Very well said and very well put. So, coming to the various career opportunities that one can look out for after becoming an astrophysicist. So, are there plenty opportunities which are meaningful and lucrative for an astrophysics in India itself? Or, in your experience, do you see most of them heading abroad?
Okay. So nowadays, there are a lot of people who were outside. I mean, for example, I also went outside India for postdoctoral experiences, but then I decided to come back. So before I go into my personal journey, so there are a lot of options that are available for a professional astrophysicist. So the traditional option is to come back to academia as a faculty member and in turn train PhD students. And but then the academia cannot absorb all the PhD students that it is producing. So there are other lucrative avenues also, like space agencies like ISRO centers in India. They hire a lot of PhDs in astronomy. Uh, for example, a lot of alumni from IIA have gone into different ISRO centers, and they are have risen through the ranks, and they are contributing to a lot of, spacecraft launches and designing telescopes and things like that. There are a lot of non-traditional ones, like you can, for example, founding a private space company, or you can work for things like Google DeepMind, TCS, or Infosys Research, and even you can go into the banking sector if you're interested in big data. So I can give you an example of an alumnus of IIA. Now, this is like a long time ago, 20 to 25 years ago, who did his PhD on solar telescopes. And then he went on to USA for his postdoctoral experience. And there he started a company that does cutting edge optics research and manufactures artificial lenses for the human eye. So they use a lot of
Wow.
adaptive optics and things like that. So there are like a lot of interesting and offbeat career opportunities for a PhD in astrophysicist. So like you asked, can one work in space research organization and things like that? So obviously, the answer is yes. And as you know, and I mentioned before, that there are a lot of technological spin-offs from astrophysics
Hmm.
that include applications in medicine, computing, and consumer products like GPS navigation, right? That has come from astrophysics. The World Wide Web, the CCD camera sensors, the concept of memory foam, and even freeze-dried food, right? This ready-to-eat food that we eat, right?
Okay.
Then there are carbon fiber composites, which are now used in high performance prosthetic legs. For example, these Paralympic Blade Runner, right? They
Mhm.
use these prosthetic legs. So these were like developed for spacecraft and space technology before being used on Earth for different. So all these innovations, they stem from the need to develop these specialized technologies for space exploration and scientific research. And then they're adapted for use on Earth. So of course, I mean, you have so many spin-offs, so there will be as many careers as well
Yeah.
from.
Well, that's so great to know. Finally, I would like to wrap up this podcast by seeking some advice and inspiration that you can provide to our audience. What advice would you give to young students who are curious and fascinated about space, but are unsure if they can handle the science behind it.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, you can cut if you're really passionate about astrophysics. So there are, a lot of ways in, contributing to astrophysics. So there is, of course, this big data and machine learning, AI, and things like that. So you can have alternative careers by working on these areas. For example, if you don't want to be a professional astrophysicist, you can be what is known as a space weather forecaster. So what is a space weather forecaster? Just like, there are weather forecasters. So we need these are people who study the sun earth system. They monitor solar flares and coronal mass ejections, and they can tell you when to shut down your satellites so these are not damaged by, high energy emission from the solar flares and things like that. So there are uh, different space agencies. Every country has a space agency. They hire these space weather forecasters, for example. Then you can also help in satellite dynamics and orbit analysis, for example. And if your passion is astronomy outreach, you can also do scientific visualization and, for example, you can convert complex astrophysical simulations into 3D visualizations, animations, and even virtual reality experiences. And you can prepare exhibits and things like that to reach out to the public to, excite their imagination. So you can also be what is known as a planetary defense specialist. So there are a lot of, asteroids and comets around in the solar system. And, some of them, well, we are lucky that, we haven't been hit by asteroid in recent past, since probably the biggest one being when the dinosaurs were wiped out. But then there could be hazardous objects, so you can be the one who is, tracking those hazardous objects and things like that. So there are like a lot of these other fascinating things that one can you know uh, do as a profession. And if you are not if you do not want to become a professional astrophysicist, then you can also pursue it as a hobby. For example, there are a lot of citizen science platforms like Zooniverse, or you can download all these astrophysics data is actually freely available. For example, if you want data from the Hubble Space Telescope, or more recently, the James Webb Space Telescope. So these are some of the data you can download on your own, and you can, start having look at them images and maybe analyze them on their own. And so there is a lot to do. But one thing that I would also like to say that when you are doing astrophysics research, it doesn't go as planned, right? Then you have to remember that the journey is as important as the destination itself. And why would you do something if there is no challenge in it, right? So mundane tasks that we do every day is good for calming the mind, but to keep your brain young and retain its plasticity, so you need creative pursuits. So that's why we are in astrophysics. So doing astrophysics or research is basically a way of life. I mean, that is what it's not just a profession, it's a way of life. That's how you should think about it.
That is such a profound and a beautiful advice, Dr. Piyali. And on this note, I would end the podcast and thank you. Thank you so much for giving us these in depth insights into the space of astrophysics. And I'm sure this podcast would be very enlightening and revealing to our audience. And it would help them, kind of take up astrophysics, or at least, have clarity about how to begin with it or how to start with it. I mean, thank you so much once again. for taking out the time. We greatly appreciate your time and expertise.
Thank you, Ruchika, for this No Herd Mentality podcast. And I hope, even if, few people are excited or motivated to do astrophysics research, I would think my goal is served.
I'm sure you would have inspired our audiences out there for sure today. Thank you so much. You were listening to No Herd Mentality Career Conversations. Please subscribe to our channel for more such in-depth conversations on different career paths, courses, and countries. I'm Ruchika signing off on behalf of No Herd Mentality.